All right, everyone. Welcome to the virtual Pack Walker Summit. My name is Rachel Martinez. I'm co-owner of the Healing Pack with my partner Andrew. And this is our free lecture series. Today we have a very much anticipated guest. We have Molly from Pete's Adventure Pack, who's going to be talking about how lack of fulfillment impacts our dog's behavior. Without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Molly. Take it away.
Thank you, Rachel. Awesome. So I will dive right into it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Molly Averin. I am the founder and dog trainer behind Pete's Adventure Pack and the Adventure Dog Channel, which is my online membership program. I'm based in Park City, Utah. And although I work on all of the usual suspects that we do as dog trainers, from reactivity to separation anxiety and things like that, my true passion and kind of love really fits within the fulfillment category, specifically adventure-based activities such as hiking, skiing, biking, things like that. And they've been a big part of my life for quite some time. So I just want to give a little bit of a background on why I'm obsessed with this topic. And then we'll kind of dig into like why fulfillment impacts your dog's behavior. So in 2007, I adopted a dog named Pete, who I ended up naming my business after, and he really set me on the path with rescue. Prior to that, I can thank my mom for my love of animals and rescuing and caring for them. And she was like rehabbing baby squirrels and birds and all types of things. She's pretty amazing. She's also on this call. Hey, Mom. Uh, but Pete was really the one who kind of turned the next page for me. And the next thing I knew, I found myself volunteering at the shelter quite often. And if you've ever walked into a shelter, you know how loud it is. You know that you can feel the energy and the stress from the dogs. And that's not a knock at shelters. That is just inherently the nature of a bunch of dogs in kennels in one location, and things get a little stressful. So when I walked into that shelter for the first time ever, I just like felt and absorbed everything from those dogs. And without having any professional training background or really knowledge other than the experience that I'd had throughout my life with personal dogs and dogs that my mom and I were rescuing and doing things with, without professional knowledge, I still could feel that from them, where I was just like, holy crap, these dogs need exercise. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I know that they need exercise. So I ended up spending quite a bit of time volunteering at the shelter, walking dogs, running with them. And I hate running, by the way, but I was like, these dogs need to run. We're going to run. So that's what I ended up doing quite a bit of. And then one day I met this dog named Gypsy, who was youth listed, and she was youth listed only for being there for too long. She was literally perfect. I got her out. She was super social, like just happy-go-lucky, like quintessential perfect dog. And so I, at that point, started Googling rescues, because when I asked the shelter staff, I was like, what happens if, like, is there any, other than her being adopted, what can I do? And they're like, well, rescues sometimes will pull dogs from the shelter. So at 19 years old, I called a rescue, the Humane Society of West Alabama. And I said, if I foster this dog, will you save her? And they said yes, by some miracle. So that's when I started fostering. And next thing I knew it, this dog was a part of my life. No one judged my outfits in these photos, by the way. These are some hardcore throwbacks here. So no, let's leave our judgments aside. But she was, integrated into my life, and we went backpacking, hiking, and I got my first mountain bike this year. So it was just a hardtail, cheap, crappy mountain bike, but I still remember my first bike ride with her and with Pete. And I was in like a large open field, and I just remember seeing the joy on her face and just how fun that was. And I was like, this is the most fun thing that I've ever done with a dog. And just seeing her getting to run and use her whole body was just really life-changing for me in that moment. She ended up getting adopted super quickly and going to a great home. And I was able to see kind of firsthand just the way that fulfillment and truly bringing a dog into your life in that way can actually change behavior. And she went from this like very pent up energy dog to then being pretty fulfilled by the time she got adopted. So that was my first experience with that. However, I stand corrected by my mom that the first time I ever biked with dogs was not actually with Gypsy. It was with my collie Sassy when I was in elementary school. So biking goes a long way back for me, apparently, although I think when I was biking with dogs at this age, it probably looked a lot different than what I do now. It's my guess. So back to fostering and shelter stuff. I, at that point, was hooked. And since 2007, I have not stopped fostering. This is just like a quick snapshot of some of the faces of the dogs that I worked with at the shelter. I would not only foster, but I would go to different shelters and bike with the dogs and run with them and get them out to get exercise. So I kind of became hooked on that and just seeing the difference that it made for the dogs. And now I still foster today for Second Chance at Love and Poso Dog Rescue. So fast forward to now, I have never felt more to my core that fulfillment truly matters, and fulfillment makes an incredibly positive impact on not only a dog's behavior, but their health span and your relationship and your bond with your dog. So I focus a large portion of my time and energy onto this topic, and have made my whole business around it. So with that said, what is fulfillment? This is obviously a word that gets thrown around quite a bit in the dog training industry. I think it means different things for different people. So I just want to kind of review what it means to me. And when you Google fulfillment, there are two definitions that pop up. The first is meeting of a requirement or a condition. This feels to me like dogs have a requirement for exercise. Dogs have a requirement to stay healthy. So that one feels pretty simple to me. Like, if you're going to have a dog, exercise is part of that program. It might look different for different dogs, of course, but you can go ahead and put that on the list of things you need to be doing, because it's a requirement that they have. The second definition that comes up is really intriguing to me because it says happiness as a result of fully developing one's abilities. This to me feels like, if you look at all the pieces of the pie when you're talking about dog training or just dogs being happy and fulfilled in general, there is your energy, there is your relationship, there is the structure in the home and the things that they need. Obviously, their basic requirements of water, shelter, food, etc. But then fulfillment and physical exercise in this way is a big piece of that pie. And I feel like, to my core, that in order for a dog to be truly fulfilled and balanced and happy and stress-free, fulfillment has to be a part of that puzzle for you. So I just really like that definition. And then when I speak about fulfillment specifically, I am usually talking about physical and mental exercise combined. So what I mean by that, if you've ever watched a video of me biking with dogs or skiing or hiking, or worked with me in person, you know that when we are moving, so when we're moving forward, whether it's on a sidewalk or a trail, the dog is next to my side or behind me. They are connected and following in what I call the safe spot. Initially, when I started teaching it this way, especially with biking and skiing and horseback riding, it is for a safety perspective, because when we're going down the trail, I need to be able to like see what's coming so that I can advocate for my dog, so we can step off the trail if we need to, so that I have really close connection with my dog and I'm not having to recall them from far away, right? Like, them being next to me in the safe spot is the safest way to be doing these activities. But the other added benefit of doing it in this way is the mental component. So yes, if your dog is zooming up and down the trail, sure, they are getting physical exercise. And explore time is totally needed and necessary, right? And we do have that. When I stop moving, when we get to, say, the summit of a hike or like middle of the hike, or even just a nice big open area where nobody's around, I'll be like, okay, go have your adventure time. You know, they get their sniffs in and roaming time and everything like that. But when we're moving, what I started to realize is when they're focused on staying in the safe spot, they are mentally working so hard. And when you combine mental and physical exercise together, you end up getting a dog who is not only more engaged with you during the activity, but they come home significantly more tired, significantly more fulfilled. So that's why when I talk about fulfillment, that's what I'm talking about, is those style activities where the dog is following in the safe spot while you're moving. And of course, with that said, like, big asterisk always, every dog is different. I always get the person that's like, my dog can't run. And I'm like, that's totally fine. Like, I have friends who, you know, their dogs have spinal injuries and they go to PT and do the pool where they're running on a treadmill or walking on a treadmill in the pool. Like there's always some level of fulfillment activity for your dog. But with that said, asterisk, I'm talking generalizations, but every dog is different. You know your dog best. But what I do feel strongly about is what most dogs do have in common is that they thrive on structured exercise, even small dogs. So if you look on my Instagram, you'll see quite a few videos of little dogs also at camp with me who are mountain biking, who are skiing, who are running behind a dog sled, and they absolutely love it. And they're like crushing the mountain bike trail. And it's not necessarily breed specific. Like one of them is a Cavalier King Charles, who technically is supposed to be a lap dog, and he literally runs with the Huskies. So every dog is different. Even small dogs like fulfilling activities. So always kind of, I'll get into a little bit of like how you can fulfill your dog, how you start things like that in a little bit. But I think the biggest difference that I see behaviorally in a shift is when dogs are getting to use their full body to their full potential, and they're engaging in activities that are specific to their individual needs. So there is a bit of research out there at this point of why general exercise is good for your dog. Obviously, some of the like typical health related things, like good for building muscle, good for weight management, lower blood pressure, things like that, that are obvious. But there's also some newer studies that are coming out that have some really cool information. Like dogs with noise sensitivity and separation anxiety have significantly less than dogs who are getting daily exercise. So there's some things that are coming out that are interesting, but what I find intriguing is that all of this research is very generalized to exercise or to walking your dog, which, by the way, nothing wrong with walking your dog. Like this is obviously the Pack Walker Summit. Walking is amazing, but a lot of the research just focuses on walking. It doesn't focus on different types of activities or how often you should be doing activities or for how long. And I think part of it is just that every dog is different. So there isn't really like a one size fits all plan for everybody out there. You kind of have to figure it out on your own a little bit, but that's what I want to talk about today. So with that said, I want to go through some of my experience with client dogs, foster dogs, and talk through a couple of case studies. With that said, I just want to preface that I am never talking about these things to shame or to judge. It is always coming from a place of education and wanting to help more people, help more dogs be fulfilled in the world, and have happy dogs at the end of the day. So something that I realized recently was that 100% of my clients' dogs with reactivity issues were being underfulfilled in one of two ways. Not because somebody was choosing to not fulfill their dog and they knew that it was good for them. They thought that they were doing what was best. But again, there's just not a lot of information out there about how we should be fulfilling our dogs or what our dogs' needs are. So the first one was they weren't getting enough exercise in general. And two, they were getting enough exercise, but it wasn't structured exercise and it missed the mental component. So I will give a couple examples of these different things. The first one, not enough structured exercise. So this is a foster dog that we had back in 2018, I think. And when he came to us, he was like just the easiest. Like I remember saying to my husband, this is one of the easiest foster dogs we have ever had. And he got along with our pack beautifully, no reactivity issues, crate trained, like literally in a day, was just like chill in the home, had a great off switch, would go and do the activities with us. We were doing a lot of hiking and biking at the time, and he joined for all of those things. But I would say he was like generally medium level energy. So not the highest level Husky Shepherd mix I had ever seen by any means, but just kind of medium energy level guy. And then he got adopted by a couple who, when we spoke with them and the rescue spoke with them, they said they were going to be walking him every day on long walks. They had kind of a property with a lake, and they were going to be taking him hiking. And so it was really the rescue that I was working with at the time. It was their decision on the adoptions more than the fosters. Now I'm much more involved in that process, but at the time they were like, nope, this seems like a great fit. He's going there. And so he went to his adoptive home. And then about a year later, I got an email from the adopter saying that he had turned into this very reactive dog, who was not only trying to bite neighbors, but was going for dogs, having quite a bit of issues in the home. He was breaking out of his crate and being destructive, like kind of the whole list of things. And in their email, they emailed me. They thought they were emailing the rescue, but they were like, the foster lied and said he was crate trained, which, you know, I very nicely responded and was like, actually, that's me. And he is crate trained. But so his behavior just had this major shift, right? And so they wanted to return him. So we agreed to foster him again. And when we went to go pick him up, to our surprise, he was significantly larger than he was when we adopted him out to the adopter. So if you look at this picture, that's what he looked like before. That's what he looked like when we picked him up. So he had gained quite a bit of weight and looked very different, and like even behaviorally was much more stressed out. Like he was already like nervous panting in the car with us, like his whole like demeanor and energy was just different. So from that point, I obviously started working with him, and started getting him kind of on an exercise program where he was going on hikes with us. He really wasn't able to run when we first got him, like he was significantly overweight. And so we started things out slowly, started working on the reactivity stuff, which he had carried over back with us. I think at that point, you know, practicing something for a year, it obviously continues on, even though he was back with us and in a new structure again and getting exercise, things like that. A little bit of it was still lingering in the beginning. So I feel like it took probably about like at least a month to 2 months before I started to see his behavior change, and starting to get back to his normal self. So, and obviously losing weight through that process of exercising, and he was soon enough able to ski with us. So by the time that we were about to adopt him out, hopefully this video will play. I hope that's showing it for everybody okay. But this is him skiing with me. You'll see him pass a person in a minute. And he just started to like kind of become his true self again, which was really cool to see. So, I'll let this just play for a minute. So yeah, we just passed a person there. And this was still kind of like on his weight loss journey, if you will. But he was decreased in size significantly from the first time I met him. So, yeah, his behavior started to slowly kind of come back to his normal self. He got back to a healthy weight, and he eventually got adopted by a lovely couple up in Minnesota who has a dog sled team. He does not pull on the team anymore, but he did for a little while and was amazing at it. So he now still lives with them, and he runs behind the sled and does some free running stuff rather than pulling. But that's kind of like his story. I think there's obviously a lot of examples of dogs who benefit from exercise and examples of when lack of exercise impacts behavior, but he was one of the more extreme examples that I had firsthand kind of visibility into of what he was like before, what he was like during. You know, the family that adopted him said they were walking him, but the walks were not structured. I think they were kind of letting him take them where he wanted, things like that. And for him, it just was not a good setup. But the lack of exercise really kind of impacted not only his overall health, but also his behavior too. So some of the key learnings from this one were, one, that it's not just fulfillment piece. Obviously, like I am a dog trainer and recognize that overall energy, structure in the home, the relationship that you have with your dog, the ability for them to relax and turn off, structured decompression time, like all these things really matter and kind of build up to the overall behavior. But the fulfillment piece plays a huge part in that. So when dogs are underfulfilled, they obviously have pent up energy. That energy has to go somewhere. So for Bear, that energy was being put towards his reactivity. That energy was being put towards his alerting for every single person that he saw. in the house and outside of the house. And it was also going towards destructive behavior in the home and trying to escape his crate and things like that. So that energy doesn't just go away, it has to go somewhere. So that's something that I typically see when dogs are being underfulfilled or underexercised. And then on the other note that I kind of mentioned already is that when dogs are underfulfilled or not exercised properly, it can cause impact on their health, which can also cause an impact on behavior. Some of the foster dogs that I have had who did have medical issues were really impacted behaviorally, where they were super stressed out, super anxious, or even just seemingly kind of grouchy. But it's really because they were uncomfortable and they weren't feeling well. So I do think that with Bear specifically, that had an impact on his behavior as well. And now there's also research coming out from vets that shows that lack of exercise can actually cause anxiety and lead to behaviors. So like I said, that's not the only factor. Like fulfillment is a piece of the pie, but it is a really big piece. And I think with this example, it was just so clear to me of like just the change and shift that we saw from beginning when he was with us to when he got adopted to the when he came back with us to how he is now. So just wanted to share that one. And then the next example is when there is exercise, but it's not structured. So this is a client's dog who is also a good friend of mine. I talked to them about this before giving this example, but so they are incredibly active people. They both were professional athletes and exercise all the time, biking, skiing, all of the things. And their dog Rue joins them for those activities. But Rue, when I first met her, was having some pretty big feelings and big reactivity issues on the trail, specifically with other dogs. And so anytime a dog would come up, she would react and even like go try to nip and hurt and all the cattle dog things. So the issue with this scenario is like, yes, they were exercising her, but she was zooming up and down the trail the entire way. And with a dog like Rue, who is naturally a little bit insecure, it is really important for her mentally to feel safe, to feel like her humans can advocate for her and that she's not having to guide the way. So being tucked in the safe spot, once we started working together, she started to very naturally transform, where like when she's hiking and biking and skiing and doing all the things, when she's running in the safe spot, she's passing people and dogs, no problem. Like it was almost like a night and day shift for her, where when she didn't have that structure and she was just zooming up and down the trail, she was kind of constantly in this state of panic because there was no direction, there was no guidance being given. She's just like, I'm just running. And like the mental component was really missing. So when we started asking her to get into the safe spot, not only was she using her brain more, which was good for her because she's a working dog, but also she started to feel more safe because her humans were able to advocate for her. If a dog tries to approach, they can kind of block and keep moving. Like it just makes the dog feel significantly safer, especially when you're working with an insecure dog like Rue. So these are just some, I have a couple videos. Well, actually, I lied. I have one video. One's a photo of her biking with me and my dogs, which she is a dog who comes to Adventure Dog Camp once a week, which we also saw a huge benefit in just from her social skills. So not only is biking in the structured way really, really good for her mentally, but also doing these activities with groups of dogs is so impactful for her social skills. So, you know, she's now able to go on trail and is not reacting anymore, which is amazing. But this is a video that's super short, but that was her mom skiing with her and passing our dog. So we were just like, pass the scene. That's not my dog. That's a client's dog. But we were practicing pass bys, just kind of back and forth of Rue sticking in the safe spot. So I'll just play it again. And so she's following behind, she looks over at Cam, but she keeps going. And like, that's how easy it is for her now every single time passing dogs. So I think that just goes to show that like having the mental component not only has her more fulfilled, more happy, more tired at the end of the day, but also it's making her feel safe when passing dogs because she knows that her mom is going to advocate for her in her space and she can pass very nicely because she's being given guidance and direction and can do that super well now. So that is Rue. And then the learnings from this one, which I kind of mentioned already, but the mental component is equally as important as the physical. And when you combine both, you have a dog who is way more engaged during activity, but also able to relax post-activity and much easier decompress at home. So I've just seen that really big shift when you're adding in that mental piece. And then with reactivity, moving by triggers at a faster pace while exercising actually tends to be easier. So this is interesting because I don't usually tell people to do this. But when I am personally working with a reactive dog, I will sometimes actually start biking with them first, or doing something that is a little bit faster and more engaging, because the dog is, one, more focused on what I am doing. I'm a whole hell of a lot more fun on a bike than I am walking, especially for a fast-paced dog. So they're more engaged and focused on me, but also they're working harder. So they're mentally focused on sticking with me. They're focused on biking, and the trigger becomes less of a big deal. So I have seen a lot of positive results in getting good reps in on a bike, doing pass-bys with dogs that are normally reactive, having that positive association start to take place. And then the walks become much more easier over time. So that's just something with Rue that we did too, where I was like, let's get on the bike, let's get on skis, let's get some positive pass-bys going, and then the walks are going to become easier. So that's just kind of an interesting learning that I've had over the years too. And then the biggest shift that I see, this was another thing for Rue, where like she was kind of like weekend warrioring it a little bit. Like, even though our humans were really active, they weren't taking her on every single activity. Where the biggest behavior shift that I see is when you get into a routine base with your dog. So like averaging 5 times a week. And obviously, if you can't do that, some is better than none. 3 times a week is great. But the biggest shift that I see is kind of in that 5 times a week range of activities happening where your dog is fully getting to use their body. Our personal dogs, as an example, we have a pack of 6, mostly Huskies. We will bike, ski, do something where they're getting to run and use their full bodies 5 times a week. And then they have 2 kind of like rest days. Sometimes one rest day, we actually literally just rest. And then one day we'll go for a walk or something more chill. So all of our dogs are also a little bit different, but that's kind of like the typical schedule that we have them on. So this next example is actually one of our personal dogs. So this is a photo of Coda, who is my husband's favorite dog. Even though we are not supposed to have favorites, we do. So she is our most high energy athletic dog that we have. She can easily go on a bike ride for 20 miles with my husband and still probably do more afterwards. Like, she is just an absolute machine. And she's always been that way. Like, the rest of our dogs cannot do what she does, even though on average we bike, if we're like a typical work day, we'll bike anywhere from 4 to 8 miles with all the dogs. She can then still go do 20 miles the next day. Like, she just has that ability. It's not that we've built up that endurance, it's just natural. So anyways, there's been obviously a couple times in our life where life happens and we were not able to fulfill her in the way that she needed that week. So those couple times she has defluffed beds, where, like, say it's been 3 or 4 days in a row where things were crazy. We didn't exercise the dogs the way that we typically do. Maybe she just got a walk. She, like clockwork, 1 + 2, 1 + 1 = 2, she defluffs a bed. So it's just kind of fascinating to me that, like, even for a dog who is getting so much all the time, these like couple little weak spurts here and there that this has happened, the only thing that changed, there was nothing stressful going on in our lives. There was nothing different going on. It was literally just the activity decreased, and that happened. So I don't have any photos of her defluffing beds or videos of it, because I think my husband has deleted all evidence of that happening, because I should never say anything bad about his angel baby, but it's true. But I do have some photos of other Huskies who have defluffed beds from similar scenarios. So both of these dogs were fosters. These defluffing scenarios actually both happened when they came right out of the shelter. This was a while ago, by the way, I no longer put fluffy beds in Huskies crates. They only get Kuranda beds, because when they come right out of the shelter, they have a whole lot of pent up energy, and this result was not uncommon. So Anyways, yeah, I just felt like that was also an interesting example to share of a dog who is constantly getting exercise, but the couple times where she didn't get enough, that is the result. So yeah, exactly what I just said. Learnings, even when you have a great relationship, good energy, structure in the home, all the things, lack of exercise can be an immediate impact on behavior. And every dog is different. So pay attention to how much exercise your dog needs. Like when you're doing X amount per week, how does that affect them? And there really is no one size fits all plan. It's really paying attention to your own individual dog. So some general learnings that I want to talk through. The biggest shifts that I have seen in behavior is when dogs are getting to use their bodies to their fullest potential. So meaning running. So I've had quite a lot of clients who come in with herding dogs or huskies, and working dogs that are high energy, where they are only getting walks or they're only getting to run around in the backyard. And again, this isn't from lack of caring or lack of love or anything. It is just lack of knowledge and education on what certain dogs need. So every single client that I work with now, fulfillment is always a topic of conversation in the consultation call of what are you doing for your dog, from a fulfillment perspective. So that's one of the very first things that I will work through, because I truly believe that when that piece gets added in, and say a border collie who was previously only getting to run around the backyard starts getting to bike, behavior starts to shift pretty quickly. Usually I see the biggest shift happen about after a month of doing a really good routine base, kind of fulfillment plan, and things start to change. With that said, obviously it's one piece of the pie. So secondly, it builds a beautiful relationship and bond with your dog. I feel like when I first met one of our dogs, Lucas, who came from Sherry Lucas and her rescue, when I was doing long line work with him initially and just walking him, he was kind of like, whatever, like you're all right. Like you're okay. And then I think when I brought out the bike, he looked at me like I was the greatest thing that has ever happened to him. Like he just transformed and our relationship transformed and our bond is better than it's ever been. And I do credit a lot of that to the fulfilling activities that we do together, because I'm just speaking his love language. So, and then third, it's really fun. Like I think dog training can be super serious, and obviously it needs to be serious sometimes. Like, you know, we're working through really big stuff. And there's a lot of necessary things like long line work and leash work and thresholds and all of the things that are necessary. But I also think that the fulfillment piece is so freaking fun, and it just brings a little bit of like general enjoyment back with your dog that maybe is lacking. Like maybe you're at a point of frustration because things are really hard. Some of the fulfillment activities can just like, oh, wow, I'm having fun with my dog now. So I think that that's an important part. And then I talk a lot about decompression time being equally as important as the fulfillment activity in itself. So I think there's this misconception about endurance. And when we exercise our dogs, their endurance is going to get crazy and they're going to need more and more and more. And Christina Barcelona actually asked me that question not too recently in one of our virtual group sessions for the Adventure Dog channel. She was like, I feel like, are we just going to build endurance? Because that's what I keep hearing. And I think the answer to that is no, for a couple reasons. One, when you have decompression time at home, so meaning that you've gone and done an activity, and then when you get home, your dog goes to the crate or goes to place, they're shutting off their brain and actually calming down and decompressing. So that pattern of on and off is so important for them, because if you just go and do the activity and then you let them out into the backyard and they're just running around and they're running around your house all day, yeah, they will absolutely build up endurance, but it's almost like stressful mental endurance. It's not physical endurance necessarily. It's just they can't turn their brain off. So that can be incredibly stressful for the dog. But on the second part of the endurance question, we have, you know, and from our fosters who have lived with us for a long time, like they've all kind of fully integrated into our pack and have done the same routine that our personal dogs do, which, as I mentioned before, is, you know, 5 times a week they're doing anywhere from 4 to 6 miles of biking or skiing or whatever the activity is, or pulling sports for ski touring. And only Coda, who I mentioned earlier, is able to do 20 miles. Like Lucas taps out at 7. He's like, I'm done. Like I'm slowing down, turning off. Like that's as far as I can go, right? So like they all kind of have their limit, even though they're doing the same amount usually together as a group, they're not all building up endurance in the same way. So I think just like people, there is a natural ability and natural skill level. Like I'm friends with a bunch of other women who bike who absolutely kick my ass. I try really hard to be as good as them, and I'm just not. Like, I'm never going to bike as fast as they do. I will try and I'll keep trying, but it's just not going to happen for me. So everybody has their own natural abilities. So I don't think that endurance is necessarily going to be built to this astronomical level that everybody expects it's going to be. So the next point, I think we greatly underestimate our dog's ability. I think that this partially comes from the lack of research that's out there about why exercising your dog in these types of ways is really great for them. So I think that the majority of people end up doing less than their dog needs, but again, not for lack of love or lack for care, it's just lack of knowledge. So don't underestimate your dog's abilities. Even if you have a Cavapoo, he might be a rad biking dog. And with that said too, one of the things that I get asked a lot is that if your dog bikes really slow, so I have a lot of clients whose dogs are just cruising, like they're just like trotting out like on a beach cruiser. And they're like, does my dog like biking? Like they're not running very fast. They don't look like your huskies that are bombing down the hill, full speed. But yes, like there are tons of dogs that I know. And one that comes to mind was our foster Earl, who we fostered for Sherry. He was a German Shepherd. He loved biking, but he was just super slow. Like he just liked to cruise. So just because your dog isn't wanting to rip full speed doesn't mean that they're not enjoying it. So sometimes the trotting pace is really lovely for them, and it's more of their like natural gait than walking. So and the other learning that I've had is that the dogs who have joined day camp and are doing fulfilling activities with other dogs has majorly shifted their behavior in terms of reactivity and social skills. So my friend Andrea from Canyons Canine and I were talking about this today, that the dogs who join our day camps have a major behavior shift because their social skills are building. They're doing these fulfilling, fun activities with other dogs in their presence. They're working together as a team, especially for the dogs who I take dog sledding with me for camp. I over the years have slowly integrated in more camp dogs into doing dog sledding and pulling sports. And initially, some of the dogs were not pulling. They were just kind of running with the team or a little uncertain, a little unsure. And over the course of a couple of weeks, they started to pull on the line a little bit more, started to get more comfortable, more confident. And now some of those dogs who were my most insecure dogs that came to camp with me are pulling so hard and so proud of themselves. And you can just see their confidence has built a ton, which is really cool. So that was kind of a surprise to me that, I always thought like, and there are dogs who really don't like to pull, first of all. I know huskies who are like, nope, not for me. But over time, getting to see these dogs kind of transform and build confidence because they're doing this sport with other dogs was really cool, and just a learning that I didn't expect. So just wanted to note that. So how do you start fulfilling your dog? If I have convinced you at this point to start doing any of these activities with your dog, where do you start? And the first thing is to find an activity that you both like to do. And sometimes this is a little bit of trial and error. I always give the example of our personal pack because we have mostly huskies, but we do have a hound and Aussie mix. He's actually in the photo down there of me rollerblading. And he is just like not at the drive level that the rest of our pack is. Like he would be so happy just going on a chill hike or going on a trail ride. So when I go trail riding with our horses, he's normally my go-to dog for that because we're going at a much slower pace and he's just like living the dream for him. Whereas the huskies and our other dogs would not be properly fulfilled if I was only taking them on hikes or trail rides. They really thrive when they're fully running. So every dog is different. So I always kind of say like, find a friend who has a bike that you can borrow, or rent some gear, like try some different things out with your dog, or hire a trainer to help you figure out what's the right fit, or join my Adventure Dog Channel program. Like there are options. And I'm always happy to help kind of brainstorm with people of what's the right fit. Like some people live in a more urban area, and that's awesome. When we lived in LA for a short time, I actually rollerbladed with the dogs quite a bit. We were mountain biking too. Like we would just drive out to go biking a little bit further, but it was still there for us. But we were doing some more urban related things. I also have a photo of me on a scooter, which is ridiculous. But if you want a scooter with your dog, that's cool too. Like a lot of people are doing that now. Or a one wheel, like there are options. So it doesn't just have to be a mountain bike or skiing or something super intense like that. Maybe it's going camping. As I mentioned earlier, I used to be really into backpacking. And when I had Pete, that was like the perfect amount of activity for him. He was actually like the most chill blue heeler you would have ever met. Like I always say that he was a different breed disguised in a blue heeler body, but he was like perfectly fulfilled with a long hike into our campsite or a hike in to go climbing, and then would just chill underneath, the area that we were climbing in for the whole day. So every dog is different, but I think finding an activity that you both like to do is kind of step number one. And then the next step is kind of finding what gear you need, setting yourself up for success, making sure you have the right first aid stuff. And then of course, training. I am always here to help, or also hire a local trainer. Like I do fully believe that sometimes local training in person is the best. I'm always happy to help find a trainer for you. And start slow. Like don't go rush into things. Like if you're going to start biking with your dog and they've never biked before, go through all the proper steps to teach them how to bike first. And then go for half a mile, see how it goes, then go for a mile, like slowly build. Because little things like your dog's pads need to build up some like calluses and like hardness to them. They're really soft, especially coming out of winter time. When we've been doing all these winter sports, our first couple bike rides of the year, we go really, really slow. We keep them super short so that our dogs stay healthy and don't have any injuries. So make sure you're always warming up your dogs too. And then just kind of observe, like, are they enjoying the activity? How is it going? How long should you be going for? How many times a week? Like really start to observe your dog's behavior. You can even write in a journal if that's helpful for you to like try to figure out what's working and what's not working. So that's kind of where I would start with everything. And then last but not least, have fun. That is the whole point of this. And I also have a 25% discount code to my Adventure Dog Channel membership. The code is PackWalk, so you all can use that. That will be live for the next day, so it'll expire tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. But yeah, I am open to any questions.
Can you hear me?
I'm gonna
So,
try to stop sharing my screen. Okay, there we go.
great presentation. Wow, lots of pictures, lots of videos. That was totally cool to watch.
Thank you.
So question, you had talked a lot about fulfilling your dog. What role does basic obedience training like recall and place training play in what you do, and how do you integrate that with all the exercise?
Yeah. So I would consider like place is great because of the decompression component. So like just as important as the fulfilling activity itself, place and crate are equal. So whenever I'm starting to work with a dog and a client or a foster dog, we go through all of the basics of leash work, crate, place, thresholds, like all of those things. And then recall, obviously being super important if you plan to do off-leash activities with your dog. I actually always start on a long line with your leashes. And so starting everything with leash work on leash, starting to recall on a long line, and then starting with no distractions, then building distractions, going to the environments that you're going to be biking in or going to be doing these activities in. So I think a lot of people will have good recall at home. in their yard in places that are really familiar. And then when they go out to a trailhead that's really exciting and there's a lot going on, they're like, my dog doesn't care anymore. So go practice recall at those environments. But with that said, there's still a lot of fulfilling activities you can do on leash. So I have a ton of clients who bike dogs on leash. That's where I start too. My foster Rita, who's a husky, she's not off leash yet. So I'm biking her on trail with a leash on currently. So there's still on leash option too.
I mean, that's what I do all the time. Don't knock the scooter. I drive a scooter with my dog on a greenway by our house, and he's on leash with me, but great. And I got motivated to do that because of the stuff you taught. So
Awesome. Oh, that's so great. Thank you.
I'll just read you a little bit of the feedback here. Fern said, woohoo, scooters.
I
You're getting a lot of scooter
saw
love.
that. Yeah, I saw that other day.
Dylan says, thank you. Drea says, great job, Molly. This was amazing. Beth says, as a fellow Husky mom, I love this. Thank you, Molly. Definitely looking into the membership.
Thank you.
All right. Any
Other
final
questions?
questions?
I have a question.
Go for it.
So we have been introducing our super high energy athletic kitty into some sports stuff. She's really taken to swimming and absolutely loves that. But we wanted to kind of have some variety for her in activities and stuff. We go hiking every day. So we started introducing her to the bike. She was very nervous about it starting off, like just very skeptical. So we've gotten her to where she's comfortable walking by it. We're like getting to the point where we're about to like hit the road and try some stuff. Is there any tips that you can give us, like biggest, like, things that you learned when introducing like a new activity like that to a dog?
Yeah, so I've had a couple dogs who actually now are at camp with me too that literally thought the bike was going to kill them. Like they were like, I am going nowhere near that object. Like that is death, not happening. And so I started by just doing leash work. Like bike was off in the corner, right? Started doing leash work with them. I did a ton of yes work where when I say yes, food comes their way. So yes, treat, just like yesing them in the vicinity of the bike. Once they got comfortable with that, I would then start to just go pick up the bike, yes them at the same time, and slowly progress to where they were fine, kind of walking next to the bike. Once I started and yesing them that whole time. So with the bike in my right hand, them on my left side, I will yes them as we're walking the bike and them together, kind of doing that leash work pattern. And then so I always do kind of multiple steps with biking. I will first do leash work without the bike, then leash work with the bike with me, just walking the bike and holding kind of at my handlebar. And then step 3 is me waddling the bike. So I like lower my seat post and I'm sitting on my bike, but my feet are still able to touch the ground. I call it the waddle. It's super awkward, but super necessary. So then you're just kind of waddling your bike really awkwardly, but it's nice. It's a nice transition step because you're not all of a sudden riding and there's like gear noises and like all this extra stuff going on. Like you're kind of slowly moving the bike with the dog. And so I would yes them through that whole activity too. And then eventually once that got good, then I would actually ride the bike and yes them when needed. So that's kind of my usual pattern.
It sounds like our next step will be the waddle step.
Yeah, make sure you lower your seat post. It
Yeah.
makes it extra awkward if you don't.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any last questions before we wrap it up here? Just want to say thank you so much again, Molly. Really appreciate you just taking time to put together this amazing free lecture that people can just get to learn more about you and what you do and the services that you offer, and also just like some really valuable information about using things like new tools with your dog. So thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we do have one more. How to transition between leash safe place to off leash.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I will first with leash work when they are walking in the safe spot when I'm moving, and that's easy. Like, I'm like, cool, I'm barely touching the leash anymore. It's loose. They're just walking nicely in the safe spot or biking in the safe spot. Then I will start to drag the leash. So you'll see a lot of pack walkers and dog trainers who are dragging the leash. I will get a longer, like 10 foot, 14 foot, or sometimes 8 feet leash that's dragging. So then that way, if there ever is a moment of confusion of what the dog is supposed to be doing, or they start to be like, oh, let me venture over here, I can very quickly step on that leash, pick it up, redirect them, guide them back to my side. So dragging a leash is kind of always the middle ground step for eventually going off leash. I do, because not just because we live in the mountains, but we see moose and serious wildlife all the time. Every single dog that I have at camp is e-collar trained. Even if similar to Kim's lecture the other day, like she said, she was like, I might not touch my e-collars. Same, like I always have them. They are a seatbelt and a safety net. If we do come across a moose that could take out all of us, I want to make sure that I have my dogs on a leash without having them on a leash. So e-collar is also a great tool to doing off leash super safely.
Amazing.
Hope that's helpful.
All right. I think we'll close it out there. Thanks again so
Okay.
much, Molly. Thanks everybody for coming, and have a beautiful rest of the evening.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Rachel. You're the best.
Thanks.